Hello, this is Jared playing Oxygen Not Included, and my dupes have arrived in the Desolans. So Rocket has arrived here with some different materials on it, including glass to make solar panels, but right now I'm concentrating on food. I've got a primitive oxygen system. You can see an oxygen diffuser there with the manual generator and a battery. So that's providing a little bit of oxygen in the area, and I'm digging down to a temperate area so that I can grow some mealwood. And I brought mealwood seeds with me because in the last playthrough I struggled to find mealwood seeds here. But figured if I put that in the rock, it's going to make it a lot easier. Also, opening up channels so that oxygen can start to filter down. So my dupes are making their way down to a temperate area that's not too far away. So this is actually quite nice. You can see we've got sandstone, dirt. Definitely going to need the dirt, extra algae be useful. So that dirt actually need to give extra digging skills so that they can actually get through the abyssalite. But that dirt is what the mealwood, the food, is going to require to grow. This is a look at the food situation on the main base. So I'm actually allowing everyone to go in this bottom room. This used to be the incubator. I'm going to no longer use the incubator, and I'm going to have all eggs from stables to be dropped off in the top room. That's where they'll just naturally hatch. So I will no longer expect to need to use an incubator, which is a very nice thing for me because it's a lot of manual work to do that. I'm still going to, for at least a certain amount of time, going to have to hunt critters or attack critters manually to actually get them to turn to meat, to ultimately turn to barbecue meat above. Going back to this new asteroid, the Desolans, I'm putting in the first planter boxes and going to put in the first mealwood seed. And that will be planted. That's going to require dirt, as I mentioned. And there's this annoying thing. So because I have this in a bin on a different ship, I'm just going to dump everything down here. I'm going to create a bin and tell my dupes, because it's not allowing me to plant that. That's because I have to get my dupes to get it out of the rocket, put the seed in here, and then I'll actually be able to plant it. I think this is a bug in my opinion, but easily work around by the fact of creating a bin, getting out of the rocket. So if you're in that situation, this is what you need to do. Also try and doing a little bit of digging up there because I want a mess hall, just to up the morale bonus. But first priority is just getting the mealwood seeds planted so that I have a food source going forward over here. Because these dupes are going to stay around for a little while. They're going to do some digging. I need to find iron ore and oil. So that is the main goal. But for, oops, a little bit of a mess. Let me clean that up. And we've got some food production going on. In the last episode, I was working on a system to filter out food poisoning from polluted water. In order for that to work, I need a little bit of chlorine. Now, I've got a tiny bit down this area, so I'm getting a pump and a filter together. It's only going to run for a very short period of time, but I don't need a lot of chlorine. Just need a tiny bit of chlorine, and I can send that in the chamber such that when it interacts with the liquid reservoir, it's going to kill off the food poisoning that's inside there. And that, along with the automation inside that room, will allow me to completely remove it and get the water out and allow it to be used in the base. I'm actually going to reuse this pipe that already existed for the carbon dioxide. I'm just going to cut it here and redirect it to point towards this new chamber that's going to kill off the food poisoning. Now, I don't want to connect it just yet because that's not a vacuum. I want to wait for that room to be a vacuum first. So I'm going to build up just to the point where it connects and then fully connect it later on. It doesn't take too long to create a vacuum in that area, so now that I do, I want to make sure I remove the ventilation out because I don't want that pump to operate anymore. Because once the chlorine goes in there, it'll start pumping out the chlorine, which is pointless. So make sure that vent is disconnected, and when it is, I can start feeding in the chlorine. There it is, chlorine going inside. In the Desolans, I set up a small barracks and a mess hall. That's just up the morale bonus a little bit in this area because I'm going to need to give these dupes more skills. One of the things that annoys me is watching dupes on the manual generator. I much rather have them do other work. And I thought ahead and brought all kinds of different material with me, one of which is glass. So I'm actually going to connect this now so that it will reduce the amount of time that these two dupes will need to spend on the manual generator. I even have an oxygen system diffuser down here, so that's going to help give power to both those systems. So now that I've got a system together to remove food poisoning, I can take the output of that water and connect it into my main water source. I'm actually going to connect it such that it gives a priority access to the water that comes out of the filtration system versus the water that comes from the teleportation system. So that's how I've got that set up over there. I'm going to be sending dupes material back and forth on a rocket, and I'd rather do that with the durable life support system. So I'm turning back on this radiation lamp and going to do that research, turn it off when it's complete. So as I start to explore the Desolens, I'm just creating this oxygen system everywhere with a little bit of a manual generator and an oxygen diffuser, just so that my dupes will have oxygen as they explore around. So I'm building a channel on the left side of my base. I may build one on the right side as well. It's ultimately going to be a vacuum, and that's going to be a very good thing for taking hot materials down, such as hot oil that may go to an oil refinery, so I don't have to bring it through the base. I can bring it through the vacuum spot. I found a second temperate zone here in the Desolens. Not sure what I'm going to use that for just yet. New item here, not ready to take on new dupes, but Dreckos. Yeah, definitely taking that. That was one of the things I actually wanted from the Desolens, and I got it from the printer. Alright, so looking back at the Desolens, we actually have an issue. The issue is one of the hot zones or oil zones is exposed to the rest of the base. What I want to do is create a vacuum between it and the temperate zone here such that I don't have heat exposure from it. So this is how I'm protecting myself from this. I'm just deleting these tiles. And whenever you delete a tile and it doesn't have any gas that can go into it, that creates a vacuum. No temperature can go through. And if I completely create all tiles between this hot zone and the rest of my base with in that such a way that I'll get a great full temperature protection. So that's what these two dupes are doing. So this is the inverted world. So I haven't shown anything here. These two dupes primarily just been busy working on the stables. But now that they're running out of that work, I'm setting up a large system that's going to grow sleet wheat in the wild. So it won't actually take any resources. So it'll be a much longer term project going on. This is a frustrating realization, but I connected one of the water pipes or liquid pipes incorrectly inside that area. And it's not possible to get in there, or at least not with Atmos Suits, without Atmos Suits in that. But I gotta destroy this, and I'll need to recreate the vacuum. Now what I did, I put a gas reservoir above. I already have the chlorine in there, so I'm not wasting the chlorine. I'm going to disable this so that water doesn't go through. Notice that first liquid reservoir, it is connected to two outputs, up and down. That's not supposed to be that way. That's just supposed to go up and up only. Also just putting a liquid reservoir here to store excess water that may be coming out of this. So the idea then is I will make that repair. I will seal this room back off. I will let the vacuum recreate a vacuum, or sorry, the pump, and then I will push in the chlorine that is currently stored in that gas reservoir. So now that I've got a Dreckos, I want to actually create a stable for it. And one of the things that those critters eat is mealwood. It has to be mealwood that is wild growing, or it doesn't have to be wild rather, but it has to be on the plant itself. It has to be accessible to it on the ground. So I'm getting my pips to plant 9 of them. Another exposed area to heat in the Desolens. This one I'll be able to make quick work out of. My Dreckos has all grown up. It is a Dreckos. Either way, I'm going to wrangle it and bring it up to a new stable, which I've created for it. That stable has a shearing station, so I'll be able to get fibers, which is awesome. The primary thing I want to do is make Atmos Suits. So it has food, and I have at this hydrogen area above. If they spend time in that hydrogen system and you shear them, they'll regrow those scales. And I'm very interested in having those regrow so I can get even more fibers. Here's the vacuum inside this chamber that has been recreated. I'm now ready to put in the chlorine and send that inside. So that is now going to, again, kill off the food poisoning. Now I've got the pipes system all working. I'll be able to get water from it. I've created a washroom on the Desolens. I'm also going to create some showers. I'm going to treat the water that comes from it in the same way I did in my main base, except for I might make this system a little bit smaller than the one that's there. So I now have a chamber on this base out here, the Dessa lens, that's going to remove food poisoning, as I mentioned. It's a little bit smaller, just has two liquid reservoirs, but I've got at the same time put chlorine into it. So I already created a vacuum in there, so now I'm at the point I'm pushing that chlorine into it. And that with the same automation system to turn one on in the morning, turn one on in the evening type of thing, I'm going to be able to get water out of that such that that water doesn't have any food poisoning in it. The next thing that I like to do in the Dessa lens is to create a nature reserve. Tons of plants in this area, so anytime the dupes pass through this spot, and they're most definitely likely going to pass through this every single cycle, they'll get a +6 morale bonus, allowing me to up some of their skills so they can do some more advanced stuff on this asteroid. Now with life support and some morale bonus items on this base, I can actually concentrate on what I came here for. And one of those things is to get iron ore. I found a steam vent, and I'm not wanting to bother to try to get water cooling off for this system. Rather, I'm just going to seal it up so that I don't have excess heat that comes from it. Even better than finding iron ore, there's also iron on this planetoid, so making sure my dupes find a path towards that so they can dig it out. And I'm going to bring that on my rocket eventually so I can bring it to the home asteroid. So I've established a vacuum on the left side of my base. That's going to allow me to bring pipes up and down with really hot stuff and not affect my actual base temperature-wise. My dupes here have been busy creating this system. I'm going to build or plant wild mealwood. Mealwood, God, that'd be terrible. Sleetweed. But I have more important things for them to do in the homeworld, so I'm going to bring supply that dupe over. And I'll bring the other dupe over as well as soon as that teleporter recharges. In time, I'm going to be sending this rocket back to the homeworld with some resources that it can use, but I want to unload all the resources such as the wheezy warts, the glass, and other materials that are on there, just so that when that rocket disappears, the dupe, or leaves this world anyways, hopefully it doesn't disappear entirely, but the dupe that remains will have resources that they can build some stuff with. So I also want to take out, I think I've got a little bit of ceramic as well that I want to deposit. So as I mentioned too, I want to bring this world back to the Desolate, also the golden magma, which I don't normally get in the homeworld. That just was a lucky chance. Is going to be dropped off there. That's going to be useful for building a pump. So the other things I want to start to load this rocket with iron and iron ore and some of the other materials that I want to bring back. Also want to get those pips off this rocket and load up some new Dreckos so I can get even more fiber reeds from the homeworld in this spot here. So I'm actually bringing eggs from the Dreckos because I got printed more of them, which is an amazing thing. So not only do I have the one Drecko there, but I've got 3 new eggs. So quite lucky about it. And this isn't even with going to the Dessa lens. This is just lucky chance on what you can find from the printer. So that will just get more of these fiber reeds that I can build Atmos Suits stations and Atmos Suits with. Since this is going to be a living area, I built this carbon skimmer to deal with the little bit of carbon that's going to be building up. Because as my dupes eat and sleep, I don't want them to be suffocating the carbon dioxide. As I mentioned, I want to get those pips off that rocket and into this world here. The main thing that I want them to do is put 3 wheezy warts together for radiation creation for the future. But I'm worried my pips won't survive long term by the time I want to do this. And that's primarily because they don't have a food source. I didn't think to bring that with me. But if I just do this now, then that means I don't really care necessarily what happens with the dupes or with the pips, as long as they do their one mission of planting these 3 wheezy warts. So I had to give one of my dupes the critter wrangling skills, and that will allow them to wrangle those pips, put it inside this room. I'm going to also get the wheezy wart seeds in there. There's 4 of them in there. Only need 3 for my purposes, and I should be able to do that quite easily. So now that I've got the pips there, they put the first wheezy wart plant down. I'll need to kill the other plants that are around the area just so that they will put in the remaining 2. I can now start to load this rocket with the Dreckos and Dreckos seeds, or not seeds, eggs rather. And I'll have a few of those put on the rocket before that rocket goes back to the homeworld, just so that I can start to get more of those fiber reeds that I can get from their scales. The research has been completed on the durable life support system, and I've even built a spacefarer module. So this one is much bigger than the other one. I'm going to have it set up in a similar fashion to the other rocket, except for one major point, and that is it's going to have this vacuum area on the top left that can store really hot liquid. Right now it's storing water. Well, I don't really care about the temperature of that, but when this rocket comes back with hot oil, that will matter. So the rocket in the Dessa lens has the Dreckos. It has iron ore and iron. It's ready to be sent back home, but cannot, because it burned off too much carbon dioxide on the way to get here. Now, that was because I had to do the trip in 2 spots and actually put down the spacefarer module in that. Normally, I won't have to do this in the future, but for this time, unfortunately, I built a carbon skimmer, so I got rid of most of my carbon dioxide. Oh, great. I will have to just go around and find a spot with a little bit of carbon dioxide. Killing myself that I had built that before I realized I need the carbon dioxide, but it is what it is. I can see a little bit down here. Not a lot, but I don't need a lot. I need to do, this is just going to be a one-time thing, and then hopefully I won't need to do this again in the future. In the last episode, I built a polluted water to oxygen system. So this system here that is feeding oxygen into the various applications such as the gas masks, that can now be turned off, and all the oxygen that comes from the polluted water to oxygen system will feed that. It'll also help feed the actual base itself with any excess amount of oxygen. So that's why I'm building these vents down here. And we're going to connect that with that system such that I won't necessarily have to rely as much on the electrolyzers in my base. One of the nice things about the carbon dioxide engine is you don't need to filter it for anything that's not carbon dioxide. Some things do take damage when you give it the wrong element. That is not one of them. So I think I'll have enough carbon dioxide here to get back home. It is time to do the second flight of this rocket on this playthrough. So I'm just sending one dupe in so that the other dupe can remain and do some work. And I'll start to get some of that material to my homeworld and make use of it. So there it is. They have landed. A quick journey from your perspective here, but it only takes about 0.6 cycles to get there. I'm going to get the Dreckos, the first thing, into their stable, and I'll start to get more fiber reeds, because when this rocket goes back, I'd like to have some Atmos Suits to go with it. So I can actually produce steel if I actually had some of the material for it that I have here. So I can turn eggshell to lime and fossils to lime. And with that, plus the iron that I've got from the iron ore, I can create steel in my metal refinery. And just point out, I am still relying on food from the pip critters on this world. Now that I've got some lime, I'm able to produce my first pieces of steel. That's going to produce a lot of heat, but I'm only going to produce just enough to make a system to actually deal with the heat from the metal refinery. My larger rocket is nearly complete. I just need to finish off the vacuum in the top left area. And I'll need to actually, fortunately, I had filled this area with overpressure, well not overpressure, but overpressure enough from the point of view of the gas vent. So I actually have to push that out of the rocket itself rather than doing that. So minor oversight, but it'll be easy enough fix. In addition to relying on the oxygen in the pipes that are being feeding inside this rocket, I also want to have an oxygen diffuser to generate some oxygen when that starts to get low. So inside that rocket, I put Atmos Suits, more ceramic, and steel. This time I'm actually going to send 2 dupes back, so I'll have 3 dupes on the Dessa lens to do some work over there. So here is this new rocket being fired for the first time, heading towards the Dessa lens, where it's going to bring that material along with the 2 dupes and a better rocket to be able to send hot oil back here to the home world. So half a cycle to get there. Now, first thing I'm going to do is, when they're inside there, is take off their masks so that they can breathe normally. So that rocket has arrived here. That has brought a lot of new materials, 2 additional dupes, And the dupe that was here they've started to work on this oxygen system. So now that I have 3 dupes here, I should be able to make good progress. So that's going to rely on electrolyzer. So the pump at the top is going to deal with excess amount of hydrogen, and the pumps at the bottom will pump out oxygen into the base. Also need to get water supply, and I brought a lot of water with me. So I want to get that off the rocket and put that down there. Also just looking for where I can deliver oxygen from the system throughout the base. Eventually I'm going to run out of water from the inverted world, which is where I'm relying my water source. So I built a desalinator, and I've got a light there for whoever's going to be emptying that from time to time. But I'm bringing that pipe over here such that it will sort of give me one single source of water for 3 different things: water from the inverted world, water from the polluted water treatment area, and then from the brine that's coming from the geyser. Eventually, I'm going to have Atmos Suits stations here set up to get oil, but I don't want to say I'm in a rush, but I would very much want to get my hands on this oil. A little bit of heat taken towards that. What I did is I built a gold magma pump, and that is thanks to the fact that I had gold magma. Otherwise, I would have had to make this out of steel, which I could do because I actually do have steel with me. But anyway, I made it out of gold magma since I had it. And I'm going to channel that towards the rocket. So I'm going to load that into the rocket. And remember, I created that vacuum area on the top left. Now, just if you're going to create this setup, make sure you shut it off so that it doesn't go filter out of the rocket. So I have a system to be able to control which liquids go out when out of the rocket. And I've got that turned off such that when it goes into those liquid reservoirs that are in the vacuum, it will stay there. And now that I've got this, I just want to create a vacuum so that I don't have heat exposure from this oil spot to the rest of the base, at least at this time. So same thing, this will be a really easy thing. Just need to create 3 tiles, destroy the one in the middle, that'll create a vacuum, and then I'll be able to get the oil into the rocket and not have any heat exposure from the oil spot. So now that I've siphoned some oil from the oil biome, I can pump that towards the rocket, and that will be loaded into the rocket for transportation back home, where I can process it to petroleum, and you'll see what I'm going to use it for once it's over there. Now that this oil tanker rocket is filled with oil, I can actually crew it. I just want to have 1 dupe on it. It's just a transportation mission. The other 2 can stay and do some work. And I will head towards the home world, delivering some oil. That's the first oil that world will have. These minor details are oh so important in this game. I want to destroy this pipe here, because what that would do when that rocket lands back, it's going to start to feed in water inside that oil reservoir. And that's going to make a mix of oil and water, and that would force me to have to filter it out, which is annoying to do. The other thing is I can do this in slower time, but I'm going to have a pipe that takes the oil that's inside that rocket and directs it towards the actual use cases of the base. And so I'm going to have to build that ladder. It's going to be very important that happens before that rocket lands, because if they don't do that, I might have to go back and save, because I could filter, but I just don't want to. So there we are. Oh my god, just in time. Oh my god, that is lucky. All right, that oil is hot, so notice that I use the vacuum channel on the left to actually transport, or will be transporting, the oil down. Built a oil refinery right there, and I'm just going to build insulated pipes towards this poly press, and that is going to produce a little bit of plastic. I want about 1,000 units of plastic, and then I'm going to destroy this whole setup and to change it around, and you can see what I'll do in the future. But the goal is just to get about 1,000 or so pieces of plastic so I can do some heat control stuff with it. Here is the oil racing towards my new oil refinery and starting to produce some plastic. Notice I've got an actual liquid reservoir there just to allow me to store the excess oil so that I can send the rocket back to the other world, Desolens, if need be. I'm going to be building more solar panels and doing more work outside, so I've created these masking stations, so when my dupes go out, they'll be able to put on a mask. And now that I've got an oxygen system that uses electrolyzer instead of burning algae, I'll have a lot more oxygen to be able to fill those masks. And with that, I'm just going to start digging out some random spots, looking for iron ore. Iron certainly would be one of the... Whoa! That Pause. This ever happens, pause. Um, okay, this ever happens, clear out, the giant mistake that this game does. I hate this bug. It check all your worlds. It can warp over because that could make a mess. Imagine if your dupes are just digging everywhere, getting themselves killed, and oh, this is odd, just a random little line there. Okay, all right, let's get that. Now that that's out of the way. Okay, so back to doing what I wanted to do here, which is just digging out some material that I want to take back to the homeworld, iron ore being one of them. Just going to make a change here to the pipes. The carbon dioxide line is going through the masking stations, which I don't want to have happen. So let's just do some destruction, and I'll rearrange this such that oxygen will be both going into the mask stations as well as to feeding to the rocket when it gets back. And I'll still have a carbon dioxide line potentially going out if I need that in the future. Okay, so I have got over 1,000 units of plastic, so I can destroy this whole setup, and I'll refactor that whole spot. But in the meantime, how about we give out some tasks? I need a demolition skill to be able to destroy some stuff in that spot. I'm going to give a masterwork skill out because I'll eventually be doing that. Let's add to construction critter ranching. Let's have 2 people do the demolition skill so I can get rid of some random stuff. Proved construction digger doesn't actually have digging skills. Well, that doesn't make any sense, does it? So we'll give them that. Critter ranching, since they still rely on food for that. Critter ranching 2 as well. Running skill, yeah, why not? If I don't know what to do, I usually give them carrying skills. Without that, I give them the ability to run around faster because all dupes need to move around. So here is another benefit to having the vacuum channel on the left. I can start digging out on into the base, actually creating a vacuum. And I've noticed I've got 2 steam turbines. I need plastic to do that. And I've got a vacuum area, which will eventually be the hot steam area in the future. I'm going to be sending this rocket back to the Dessa lens, but before I do that, I want to make sure it's filled with oil. No, not oil, water, because that Dessa lens is relying on water for oxygen, and also need water for operating an oil well in the future. So that's what I'm doing here. I now have oil. I was able to produce that to petroleum, make some plastic. I was able to bring iron back to convert that to steel. So with plastic and steel, I can do some really cool things. Also have fiber beads that have come from the Dreckos, their scales. So I'm going to do quite a few interesting things in this next episode. Hopefully you'll join me for that. Like, subscribe. See you next time.